To the VIP line to talk about the return of the NBA from ESPN is George Sedano, joining Nick and Cecil here on the Fan. George, good evening. Welcome to the show, man.
Hey, guys. How are you? Thanks for having me.
Doing good because it sounds like we're getting basketball back. We are getting basketball back. Is this kind of what you were expecting, George, as we kind of tried to figure out when sports, specifically the NBA, would return? Is this kind of maybe how you envisioned it?
Yeah, about what I expected. I would have expected maybe a slightly earlier start, maybe something a little earlier in July. But look, Adam Silver and the NBA were going to be very thorough about this. They were going to be very collaborative about this. And I know there's still some things that need to be ironed out with the union. But for the most part, we are headed in the right direction. And, you know, again, I would have liked them to have started earlier simply so they could have finished earlier and maybe not run up against football as much. In theory, if football gets going, though, you know, we don't know what that's going to look like, and you know, it'll probably get going, but we'll see. You know what I mean? But as far as the NBA is concerned, it's pretty much the deal. I like some of the stuff they've done with the play-in tournament. I think that there's a pretty good chance we're going to have at least one of those games, probably out west, because the Memphis Grizzlies have such a tough schedule down the stretch here. Even if they do take, you know, again, they probably had, I think it was like 17 games left. Even of those 17 games, there weren't a lot of cupcakes in there. So they could be in hot water potentially and could find themselves in that play-in situation with Portland or New Orleans or whoever could come out and end up being the ninth seed.
So, George, when we look at the situation, and once again, I'm happy that the NBA is coming back, but can we expect any back-to-back games that any of the teams are going to be forced to play?
So my understanding, Nick, is that it's going to be every team's going to have one back-to-back scenario in these 8 games. But for the most part, what you're going to get is you're going to get 16 nights of games. You're going to get about 5 or 6 games a night. So you're going to have probably 3 East Coast games in theory, you know, an early set of games and then a pair of probably late games or perhaps 3 late games. So it won't be much different than what you would have in a normal NBA season, except everybody's going to be playing in the same place, and the games will be spread out more, so that way all these teams will have a chance to potentially even be on national television. I don't know if that's all been decided yet, but my guess is between ESPN, NBA TV, and TNT that more teams may be featured in their regular season contests.
It's George Sedano from ESPN joining us here, Nick and Cecil on the Fan. And George, who does this type of tournament style benefit, the shortened, end of the season, and how does it potentially benefit a team like the Denver Nuggets? Because we've been talking for a while, and I'm like, if you're a team like Houston, you got that small ball, I think you could really, go maybe further than some people expected because of kind of this cramped end of the season that we have. What's it do? Who's it benefit between like a Nuggets or a Rockets? Anybody stand out in your eyes in that aspect?
Well, Cecil, I would say that Houston is one of those teams because of what you mentioned, right? Early on when they did the small ball, they tripled down on that thing with Robert Covington playing center. Right. They had good results, but then their last several games, their last handful of games didn't work out so well for them. So I think that having 3 or 4 months off potentially could be good for them and beneficial, not to mention that everyone is going to have a truncated version of a training camp. So some of those guys, like a Robert Covington, for example, who kind of came in midstream, will get a chance to get some chemistry going with Russell Westbrook, James Harden, and P.J. Tucker and those guys. So I think that will be beneficial. I also think younger teams, in theory, could have a benefit here because for older guys, man, it's going to take a while to ramp back up, even with a truncated preseason and training camp, even with some regular season games. Like I think LeBron has talked about it openly just about a month or so ago, where he said that he trains his body to be ready by a certain time of year. And he was getting to that point as the Lakers were thriving, beating the Clippers and Bucks in back-to-back games, and then he had to stop. And he talked about how that could be a big challenge for him at 35, 36 years old. So I think that he's not alone in that sentiment. I think that there's going to be some young teams that could take advantage of that. However, over a representative sample of 7 games in a series, I don't know how much that will play into it, but I wouldn't be stunned if we had a couple of upsets in that first round.
Well, George, it's interesting that you started talking about, teams who have younger rosters. They could prove to be more competitive, in this current format. But what do you think about those teams that have playoff experience in a deeper bench like the Lakers and the Clippers and even the Houston Rockets?
Yeah, look, I think that's going to help you. I mean, just experience, right, will help you. But I think that's why the league and the Players Association wanted those 8 games, right? And there's even talk potentially between a training camp and those 8 games that you could have some inter-squad scrimmages between some teams that could get organized. So I think that the older teams definitely want that. But, yeah, look, once you get into the battle and you have to adjust, because here's the thing. In the regular season, man, there's no real game planning. Like, it's very, very, very little game planning involved in a regular season game. You may at best have a walkthrough or a practice here or there. In a 7-game series, you are focused on that one opponent. The scouting is just at a different level. Teams obviously can adjust. Coaching staffs are seeing things differently because, again, they don't have to focus on 2 and 3 and 4 opponents in a week. So I think that's where you'll see the difference, right? If once these series start to get deeper, whether it's deeper in the actual postseason or deeper within an individual series, I think that stuff could help them. But again, I think the younger, fresher legs may be able to kind of strike first and knock some guys and stagger some teams, at least initially in those first couple of playoff games.
He's Jorge Sedano from ESPN, joining Nick and Cecil here on The Fan. And, George, my final question for you, and appreciate your time as always, brother, but I've always said the NBA is so much fun when they play about 50 games, right? And I remember that strike-shortened season in '99. Last time my Knicks actually did a thing and made it to the finals and got waxed by the Spurs. Not now Nick's laughing at me, but that's not the only reason I bring that up. But I've always said if the NBA started around Christmas time and then went a little bit further into the summer, it would be magnificent. I would love that product. Now, because of this schedule and where the season will end, and where it could potentially begin, could we actually see that happen for next season where they start December 1st and then, Christmas is an NBA, that's the NBA time. So is that something we could see happen just because this season's going to end so late?
So before I answer that, let's address your Knicks fandom here. I mean, I may just pull out my proverbial leather couch here to have a conversation with you because 1999 is a long time ago. I can sit here. I've made a career of making fun of the Knicks over the last 15 years. So, I mean, I can go on forever talking about this, like, the Stephon Marbury, the Larry Brown, like so on, Phil Jackson, all the saviors that were supposed to come and help and save the Knicks. And we could do that all day. But I won't put you through any more anguish. Okay, I won't have to do that.
Thank you, George. Thank you.
Just those few comments and those few names can get you through, the rest of your evening. That'll satisfy my thirst for blood there. But anyway, to answer your question, I do think that's what you're going to see. I think that. Look, I've been a proponent of this for years. I have been talking about it on radio, on television, on Twitter, wherever, that the season needs to move back 6 weeks. I mean, I think the last time I may have tweeted it was just like a few months ago, and then, but multiple times over the years I've talked about this. Just move it back 6 weeks. If you move things back 6 weeks, December 1st is around that time when you'd start. You'd avoid football, which is something we discussed at the beginning of this conversation, right, when we were talking about the scheduling of this particular, resumption of the season. But, so you miss most of football. And here's the thing. In December, you get 2 marquee nights where you get to control the audience. You get your opening night, whatever that is, and then you still have Christmas. So you have that going. And then by the time January rolls around, football's really only happening at that point in the playoffs on the weekends. So you control during the week. And let's face it, when you get to the summertime, on June 1st, if you move things back 6 weeks and you start on December 1st, the playoffs would start instead of around April 15th, would start June 1st. So that's good, too, because you're really only competing against Major League Baseball and the MLS. And I feel like you could own the summer in that situation. The finals will be done by August 1st. And here's the other thing that nobody talks about. when it comes to the NBA owning the summer. Kids can be involved in watching these games because when your playoffs start April 15th, it's tough. Let's face it. Kids are up. They're doing schoolwork. They're coming down to final exams if they're in, junior high or high school. And
Right.
It's a sport that young people love the most. It skews the youngest by far. It's not even close of the four major sports. So you get kids to actually be able to watch playoff games, stay up and watch playoff games because it's the summer. I've never been a believer that people don't watch TV in the summer. That just seems silly to me. Like, get out of here. Even in a normal situation when you're on vacation, at night you're going to sit around and watch some TV. Like, you're not going to be out the entire time when you're on vacation, even as a family. So I think they can own it. You can then finish the season by August 1st, free agency in August 1st, or around August 1st, the draft shortly thereafter, because I would do that. I would do free agency first, and then the draft. I'd flip it to what it is right now. And then you can do Summer League right at the end of August. And all you're competing against at that point is NFL preseason. And no offense, Nick, the NFL preseason has become unwatchable over the last several years.
Come on, George.
Yeah, it's become unwatchable. So I actually think it is a smart business decision for the NBA, and I think that will be the model moving forward. So a long way to go to say, yes, I think that's how it's going to go.
Well, George, Nikola Jokic is a beloved player here in Denver, and we've seen him throw tantrums on the court because he didn't get the kind of calls that he felt as though marquee players will receive. What is it that he needs to do to make sure that he's considered not just locally but nationally as part as being the upper echelon guys in the NBA?
You got to win. It's simple as that. Look, I've had these conversations. So, look, my first year covering the NBA was 2003. I was working in Miami. I was there for a very long time. That was the year Dwayne Wade came into the league, and I saw him win very quickly. He won his first playoff game in that memorable crossover against Baron Davis, and they went to the second round, pushed a strong Indiana team. Like, you got to win. He won early. Like, people always talk about, that series against Dallas. You go back and watch that series, and I have recently. It was actually on ESPN not that long ago. Like, Dwayne got drilled a lot in that series, and he got hit on the hands a lot, but he was so small and young and fast that it was hard to catch in real time unless you're watching it in slow motion. But he won a lot quickly in his first couple of years. He went to the conference finals in his second year, and that's what Jokic has to do. You got to fight through all that stuff. Once you can break through and get to a conference finals in this league, then I think you just gain the respect of everyone, right? Like, all of a sudden, people look at you differently. And it may not be fair. I'm with you. I do think the referees do their best to try to make sure that the calls are as fair as possible. But I just think that ultimately we all carry inherent biases, right? And I think that you look at him and that young team in Denver, and you got to feel like they got to break through. And once they're able to do that, if they can get to a conference finals, I feel like all of them will get the respect they want. Jokic, Murray, just so on and so forth. And look, I'm a huge proponent of the Denver Nuggets. I've been saying this, whether it's on The Jump or on my radio show or SportsCenter, that I think the Denver Nuggets are poised to be a team to reckon with for a long time if Michael Porter Jr. becomes the player we expect him to be. Let's not forget he was the number one high school player in the country. Had he not gotten hurt, he would have been the number one college basketball player in the country. And he's got a ridiculous skill set for a guy who's 6'9" or 6'10". I mean, he can handle the ball. He can shoot the ball with ease. He rebounds like a monster. I mean, this guy's got all of it. I think he just needs game time. He needs to be better on defense like most young guys. Right. But if he can even just be decent on defense, the Denver Nuggets are a team that can win a championship with that core, I think. But it needs to be that Michael Porter Jr. eventually ascends to being the number one option.
It's George Sedano from ESPN, man. Oh, thank you so much for your time. Thanks for the wealth of knowledge, and thanks for taking it easy on me being a dumb Knicks fan.
I mean, listen, brother, it's okay. You know what I mean? Like, you've always got that Allen Houston shot, right, against the
yes. Yes, and I got the Larry Johnson 4-point play against Anthony Davis and the Pacers. You got two things.
I mean, that's what you've got. Your lifetime, you weren't around for Willis Reed. It happened. You know what I mean? Like,
right.
You had one of the best players in the history of the sport, and he never won anything after 15 years of dominance. I'm sorry, I'm rubbing it in.
Thank you.
He can't even make a finger roll. You kidding me? Thanks, Patrick Ewing.
Rub it in, George. Just rub it in.
George, we appreciate you, man. Thanks for jumping on with us here.